Hello and welcome to the KOFISI Connect podcast, your source for a wealth of roundtable discussions on the workplace and business, as well as cultural news and trends from the diverse and dynamic continent of Africa. I'm your host, Richard Okenya, and today I'm very pleased to introduce Robin Njiru, Public Sector Lead, Sub-Saharan Africa for Amazon Web Services, to have a look at Africa's digital future, the work that his team is also doing at AWS across Africa in the public sector, innovation, cloud adoption, education, and much more that will come up from this conversation. Thank you very much for joining us here, Robin.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Very cold morning. How are you dealing with the current weather?
Well, as you can see, I'm already trying to be warm, and then hopefully this conversation will also make us a lot warmer by the end of it.
Yes, sir. That's what we are here for.
Absolutely.
You've been very involved in digital transformation across Africa. Speaking with you off this mics earlier, the time you've had at AWS. Before that, of course, still in a digital space. What makes this moment we are in, the age of AI, the conversation around technology, evolution, what makes it particularly important for Africa?
So thank you so much, Richard. And as you've highlighted, so I'm currently with, I've been with Amazon Web Services for the last 6.5 years, I think, like we mentioned, and but have been in the IT industry for well over 20 years now. And I think I've seen multiple phases of the transformation on the continent, and I've seen a lot of things, a lot of exciting things, and a lot of also mistakes that we've made on the continent. But I think when I think about the continent right now, 2 or 3 things come up. Number one, I think everyone knows that over 70% of the continent is below the age of 30. So we have a really growing youth demographic. Then I think the other piece is that there's a lot of, over the last, I would say 10 to 15 years, Africa is emerging from a place of coming in as a laggard in terms of technology adoption to now being a leapfrogger, meaning that we are no longer waiting for what happens first in the West to then do it. There's a lot of people questioning on the continent and saying, we have unique challenges on the continent. How do we then leverage that uniquely? Case in point, mobile money, almost a tired story now, but the continent, there was nowhere else that this was going to be innovated. Why? Because most of the other populations, majority of the populations are banked. We sat in a continent that was majorly unbanked. And so someone needed to come up with a solution that was then going to make that difference to a majorly unbanked population. And here we are now. Kenya and Africa is a leader in mobile money. So I'm starting to see more and more technology that's being innovated right now that then solves uniquely African challenges. And therefore, I see Africa being able to leapfrog. And then in terms of the youth dividend, I think I look at this as both an opportunity and potentially a challenge. When you have over 70% of the population being below the age of 30, it means on one hand, if we don't do anything about it, it's going to be a ticking time bomb. In a while, then you'll have a lot of young, smart people that are not meaningfully engaged. And then that comes with the risks of security and other socioeconomic risks. But on the flip side, if we do some intentional work now, it means that as the rest of the world is working with an aging population, it means that right now and in the coming years, Africa will be the net source of actually talent and people that you can meaningfully engage. I think that's why I'm very excited about technology and right now for the continent.
I pick up something which is our problems give us a unique opportunity to leapfrog or innovate in a way that others wouldn't.
Yes.
Something that is a concern sometimes when we speak of leapfrogging is the fear that there are populations or large populations that might be left behind. Is that something that we should be thinking about, given, as you've mentioned, across the world, it started, agrarian industrialization, then moved, that leapfrog. Does it leave others behind, skill gaps and whatnot?
Look, innovation does not follow a trend. Otherwise, it will not be an innovation by definition. So when mobile money first came in, there was a lot of fear. The traditional banks were afraid that this would come in and challenge their customer areas. There was a lot of fear that this was not regulated enough. But look at it today. Initially, the focus was going to be the unbanked, the people that traditionally in Kenya or in Africa, when you had to send money to either your parent that you supported in the countryside, you needed to put it in 3 envelopes so that the person sending it does not even know that they're carrying money, right? But today, everyone from the 80-year-old grandma to the teen in Kenya is able to operate, because now you have mobile money that is actually even for people that are not yet 18 years. And so over time, the sense is we have brought on board everyone. Again, even the banked, you and me, who are traditionally not the source, are some of the highest users today of that platform. So my view is, while sometimes you're going to innovate thinking of a specific market or age group, the reality is as innovation gets widely adopted, it is actually going to find its root, and then we are able to bring everyone on board. Does that mean that we don't have our unique challenges? For example, whereas we are seeing a lot of connectivity, there's a growing broadband connectivity across the country. Broadband is actually getting cheaper over the years. And so what that means is now you have a lot of smartphones and cheaper smartphones, and that's broadening that access. So that as we speak about leaving people behind, I know there is an intentional effort from government, from private sector, from people in financial services to make sure that there's a lot more of people being brought into that bracket. And so you'll even hear numbers where when you talk about mobile telephony, Kenya is one of those unique countries where we have over 100% coverage. What does that mean? It means that there is a lot of people with more than 2 devices or with more than a device. That's why, whereas we are 53 or 50 something million, our device coverage is over 100%. So I get the sense that yes, whereas when innovation first comes in, there's a risk that some people may be left, but there is an intentional effort towards roping in those groups.
All right. That's positive note to take away from that. What is Amazon Web Services up to lately? So, lately is 2026.
Yes, so I could talk about Amazon Web Services for months.
Yeah.
It's what I get paid to do, just for context. So I said I lead the public sector team. Amazon Web Services has been in place since 2006. So actually this year we celebrate our 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And we still are the world's most comprehensive and most broadly adopted cloud computing platform. Started as a cloud leader, still is a cloud leader, not because of we saying it, but because independent organizations like Gartner started an annual appraisal about 15 years ago, and there has been no other leader for 15 years. That does not mean, number one, that we're not seeing innovation happening globally, but it also means that we are continuously challenging ourselves to innovate. In fact, we say 90% of the innovation we do is because of what customers tell us. Customers who are already on our platforms are coming and saying, I wish I could do this. Or as we observe, the other 10% is as we observe our customers, we notice that there are areas in which they're struggling with, and so we come in and work with them. So when I look at Kenya and the continent of Africa, we are continuing to invest in infrastructure. We have had infrastructure continuously put in place, invested in since 2020 across South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, which are our tier 1 countries. We are invested also in putting teams on the ground. So we have offices like that's where our partnership comes from. We have offices here in Nigeria, in South Africa. We also have what I call skilling in initiatives across the continent. So we're doing quite a bit. But I think some of the things that give me the biggest sources of joy, if you ask me, two is one is transformation, the way we are working with different industries to transform the way they engage with their customers, and 2, the intentional effort we've put in towards skilling.
Right. What I see the similarity with, of course, Amazon Web Services and KOFISI is the responsibility that is there. KOFISI is taking care of a lot of businesses across many cities and now in 2 continents. Same to Amazon, which is across the world, really. How does that responsibility look like on your shoulder, you as a public sector lead yourself?
I think for me, I get inspired by responsibility and impact. Why is that? Having been in the industry for over 20 years, you start off by just wanting to get a job, be able to pay the bills, be able to have some money and have some disposable cash. And then as you get opportunity to work for larger and global organizations, you start to get a sense of the kind of potential impact you can make. And so for me, when I in the 6.5 years I've been with AWS, there is no year that has ever been the same. I remember at the beginning, I kicked off working in the UAE because we hadn't set up any offices here. And that consistent travel, but getting to see what my colleagues in the Middle East and Europe were doing, and then having that dream that we could one day be able to do those things in my home country, Kenya, and then in my continent, Africa, I think I get excited to be able to do that. And so today, I'm looking at some of the work that we've done with government, with industries like healthcare and education, with the young people of the country and continent, and that keeps me energized even until now.
Right. Am I correct by saying that cloud services are the biggest AWS offering?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. And you will see even in Africa, cloud computing now is growing at an average of 25 to 30% every single year. So that speaks to really a fast adoption.
Right. When we talk about cloud, throwing in words that maybe a layman will not understand, what does that actually look like, and what is it?
So this is a very interesting question, because I had this question last night at family dinner, and what I liked is I did not answer it. It's my 16-year-old son who answered it.
Oh,
and he was explaining it to his sisters and everyone around the table, and he said, if you have a phone, when you run out of space, and then you have to acquire, and then you pay a subscription every month, and then whatever storage you need is somewhere else that you're paying for, you actually pay for the cloud. But that's just one description. Cloud computing at the heart of it is really being able to leverage resources like compute, storage, analytics, and others that are not on your own, say, servers or resources, but you pay for them on what we call a subscription or pay-as-you-go or OPEX basis. And so you use as much as you need, and when you don't need, you then reduce that. And that's why it's growing very fast, because traditionally the model was to keep buying whatever. If you needed storage, you just bought a lot more of it. If you needed computing, you bought a lot more servers. With cloud computing today, that's being taken away. And that's why you have, at a very global level, to use a reference that many people would relate with, the entire Netflix operation sits on AWS cloud. And so if today you move from 10 million Netflix users to 100 million, they'll just scale effortlessly. Whereas if they were trying to put that in their own infrastructure, there could be some limitation.
Or they will need to build.
Yes, they will need to build, and that's not scalable fast enough.
Okay.
That's the way you want to think about it.
How does that look like in practice for government and public institutions?
So very exciting, actually. Remember, one of the challenges, and you're coming to my forte.
Yeah.
The way we look at government, we divide government or public sector into 4 areas: government, healthcare, education, and non-profits. And over the years, I remember when I first joined Amazon, governments were trying to do many things everywhere. In fact, the words on my way here, the two phrases that kept coming in my head was one, bigger picture, and the second one, end-to-end value chain engagement. Why? Because 5-6 years ago, when we talked to many governments across the continent, there was a lot of talk of doing many little projects in health, many little projects on education, many little projects on citizen engagement. Today, a lot of governments are talking about consolidation. Why is that even a discussion? Because today, the Minister of Health in any country should at least try to answer the question, how many patients were treated last year in what disease? And therefore, to be able then to procure the right amount of drugs for this year and for next year. A lot of governments traditionally had a challenge in that. The areas where there was less challenge was, for example, and that's why for me I keep my big word since last year is national initiatives, is now we are moving into a phase where governments are keen on saying we want to sort out the bigger picture. The Minister of Health needs to have that visibility of what's happening in the ministry, how many patients are we treating, what drugs are they engaging with, where are the gaps. Traditionally, funders used to come and fund one initiative, the HIV/AIDS initiative. And so you'd go to a rural dispensary or clinic and find a very flashy building at the corner of the quarter acre. And that was the HIV/AIDS clinic. Everything else was really run down, which meant that, yes, we're solving for one issue, but then the primary is not being taken care of. Today, we have live and active conversations about how we now sort out the end-to-end chain. And so today, if I talk to ministers of health, they're now keen on consolidating that data so that it's helping them not just have a view of what's happened in the past, but for them to now be able to invest in and plan for the future. So that excites me. And the same thing is happening on citizen services. Governments are no longer now keen to say everyone needs to come to a capital city to be served. A lot of governments are talking about an initiative, like one of the Southern African governments has an initiative with us called Government in Your Hand, meaning you're actually able to access services on your phone. 4 or 5 years ago, I was able to renew my driving license on the 24th of December. I was very scared because I thought I was going, I'm a traditional Kenyan. So on the 24th, I'm driving down up country. And I woke up and realized my driving license had expired 2 days before. I did not need to go anywhere. I went online and printed out, renewed it and printed it out. That's the kind of thing more and more African governments are looking at. And that can only be enabled by the cloud. Why? Because the kind of resources you need, computing, storage, and analytical resources you need can only be engaged with by cloud computing.
So you have big responsibility and big opportunity across Africa, since most of African governments and public institutions are just now warming up and know that they do require this. On a scaling level, as you mentioned, go somewhere, first of all, you pilot it out, give them this solution. We don't need to just have a flashy HIV clinic only. We could scale this and solve a lot more. I know that's always a challenge, given, the thin line that's being towed between public service and politics as well. What makes, in AWS's experience, how do you make these initiatives something that's sustainable and also something that can scale in the public sector?
I think what we've seen, let me start with your first point, where you say there's a thin line between public services and politics.
Yeah.
The reality is a lot of majority of the leaders we've engaged with across the continent, no one starts out by asking to be voted so that then they can do a shoddy job. Actually, most people want to come in and do a good job. Then you and I don't need to discuss whether then they end up doing a good job or not. But what we've realized as we engage, we're engaging governments, and the more they're aware and knowledgeable about what to do, the more we are seeing them make smarter choices. For example, when a government leader then knows, if I'm able to put a platform that's able to then digitize the IDs of my entire population, it then means that I don't then need to struggle to identify what resources we need to put in on education, what resources we need to put in terms of healthcare. And so net, it's a benefit for the government. And so as we create that awareness, we are seeing more and more people eager to adopt. And yes, you're right. A lot of people also come to us and say, I want a proof of concept. I'm not sure this is going to work. And one of the strongest areas I've seen as Amazon Web Services is our investment on proof of concept, because we are happy to prove that this can work. And we have our partners. We have a plethora of global partners that we work with. And we've seen cases where we come in and then do proof of concept, some 3 months, some 6 months, some even take up to 9 months. But when we can jointly prove that this works, I've almost up to 90% seen that then people are happy to then make this work by scaling it up.
What capacity then do we need, would you say, to urgently build? Whether it's in skills, digital skills, AI skills, readiness by government and public institutions. What do we urgently need to do at this point?
So I think for me, when I look at from a skilling perspective, we're in a very interesting place, because whether it's digital or AI skills across Africa, there's a growing demand. And this is being pushed by first the number of jobs that is expected to be impacted by AI. But there's also, when you go online to sites like LinkedIn, there's clear skills that are emerging as having the highest demands. And that includes software development, data analytics, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. These are, and what we call foundational digital skills. All industries are being digitized for if we just put that as a baseline. And therefore digital skills are no longer nice to have. It's now a must have. But in many cases, we are seeing, like in cloud, the lack of skills is a clear hindrance to adoption. But when driven correctly, we see skills being an enhancer to overall economic opportunity. And so whether you're thinking about just entry-level digital skills, or whether you're thinking as a young person growing in data science and analytics, growing in software and artificial intelligence and machine learning, there is a clear demand for that. And that's why for us as Amazon Web Services, when I look at some of the work that we've done over the last few years, we've trained over 300,000 people in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa since 2017. And even now more, we are seeing there's even a greater demand because of generative AI, because of AI in general, and therefore we will need to provide more and more citizens with access to these skills. And when I think about how we are doing that, I think about 3 models. One is something we call AWS Restart. It's a 12-week program that allows people to come into a training, and then it's an entry-level cloud computing skills engagement. But it's also complemented with soft skills like how to interview, how to improve your CV. And I see our job when we then, at the end, people do exams, and then they then get us a global certificate. Our attachment to jobs for AWS Restart is 40%, meaning out of every 10 people we train, at least 4 to 5 get new jobs, even for people who had no jobs. So it's very, very popular. And why I'm particularly passionate about this one is because we started it in 2021 after a friend of mine saw something in Europe, and then they sent it to me on WhatsApp and said, Robin, I see this in Europe. When will it come to Kenya? And to be honest, back then I didn't even know it existed. But then I did my own research internally. I found out, and within 4 or 5 months, we launched it in Kenya. And that has trained thousands of young people. Second one is something we call AWS Academy. This one is free curriculum taken to universities, and it allows tertiary. We've done it in universities, we've done it in colleges, we're also doing it in now TVETs. And it really just gives tertiary students an opportunity to get entry-level cloud computing skills, and then they get a certificate at the end after doing an exam and passing successfully. Now, as I say exams, each of these programs, we pay 50% of the exams. That's how committed we are to ensure that people are able to grow their skills. And then we are doing many other programs like AWS Educate, we are about AWS Education Equity, which I think, again, has invested up to $100 million in cloud and AI technology skills from 2019 to help especially underserved students to be able to gain skills in cloud computing, in AI, and overall digital literacy. So for us, skills is very important. And remember at the beginning, I talked about Africa having a booming youth
population.
Yes. So now this is some of the stuff that really excites me, because this speaks directly to us enabling this youth to be able to connect to opportunity, and not just jobs, but also be able to create their own kind of organizations and businesses.
Yeah, not just job, because I was going to also say it must be exciting for AWS, since you are creating a direct pipeline where you will still get, people to work at AWS through this.
No, 100%. And not just at AWS. Remember, these young people, where they're going to go, they also, they've become proficient in whatever they're learning. So yes, some will come to AWS, but others will go into other businesses. And while they are also could potentially be our ambassadors, but it's already making a difference. I think like AWS Restart, the 12-week program, I remember one young lady about 2 years ago giving her story and saying how she started this because someone recommended it to her. And at the end of it, she got a job right in the middle of COVID in late 2021 and was working for a company that was in Europe. And she was talking about the difference that has made in her family. Wow. So not just for her as an individual.
Yeah. There's a lesson in there given also, just to plug in KOFISI. Shamelessly here, the KOFISI Hospitality Academy, which is, KOFISI's way of also building this future-ready workforce, not just for the company, but also for, whoever else might, see what KOFISI is offering, and then, pick that up. I think probably this is something that organizations should do. No,
we must. Remember, we kept talking about impact. We must always keep challenging ourselves. I think there's someone saying, I need to quote it well, but someone said, if I have seen further, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. And so what then that means is someone before me has enabled this opportunity. It would be remiss of any of us to be here having nice conversations with cups of coffee and then don't make a difference to the generations that come after us. And then I also have to comment on a light note, don't ever be embarrassed about shamelessly plugging your organization. That's the only way to succeed. If you're not shameless, you're not going to make a difference anymore.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Masterclass here. And advice from the shoulders of giants. AI is moving really quickly.
Yes.
It's become one of those conversations where one of those terms or phrases or words that sometimes you want to bring it up, sometimes you don't. It sounds cliche in some conversations, it sounds necessary in others. Just generally from that blank slate, how do you approach conversations around AI at this point?
So I think for me, AI, and let me start it from a very basic perspective. I've likened AI in Africa to mobile money. Why? Because the same way mobile money presented Africa an opportunity to leapfrog, I feel that AI is going to solve some of Africa's specific, unique challenges in a way that's unprecedented. And I'm happy that as I prepared for this, I remember reading that last year, the African Union declared AI to be a strategic priority for the continent. And then governments and countries agreed that they're going to do three things. They're going to develop the necessary infrastructure. So when they talk about cloud computing and everything else, they're going to prepare high quality data sets. So whether for education, for healthcare, for citizens, and they're also going to ensure that there is enough research capacity on the continent to ensure that AI is used responsibly. Now, why am I excited about that? Is because I've been at the front line of seeing the difference that AI can make. Let me give you a case in point. We have a Kenyan organization called Jacaranda Health who have worked with us. They were founded in 10 years ago, in 2016. And the problem they're solving is something we call maternal mortality, where because we're in a country where almost out of every 1,000 live births, about 35 to 40 women are going to die out of every 1,000. That's the Kenyan reality. And so they set about actually putting what they call an AI-enabled health platform that then does two or three things. Number one, it provides a free SMS service. It provides to ensure that mothers can, especially in distant places. You're not talking about mothers who are in urban areas who have a lot of flow of information. We're talking about mothers who they have a basic phone, not a smartphone. But then they now provide a service that gives free updates to these ladies and then also updates them like on their expected next prenatal visit to hospitals. Because at the space where they are, a hospital visit is tens of kilometers. So for them, this is something they have to prioritize against maybe making the next meal for the people who are coming to work with them on the farm the same day. And so it's easier to postpone it because there is no urgent need. But then what this services does, then the platform combines, it reminds them about specific messages. It also helps answer specific questions. Now, the beauty about this platform, because it's an AI-enabled help desk. And so what it does, it responds on an average day to up to 12,000 messages in English or Swahili. So again, it's not too elitist. It's not just in English. It's also in Swahili. And then it also triggers now and then as the mothers prompt in and say, asante for this service, but this is the signs I'm feeling today. Remember, it's answering 12,000 daily messages. But where it picks up, because it's an AI-enabled, where it picks up that the signs seem severe, then these are prioritized and escalated, and the human then comes to the scene to say, they're going to reach out to that lady and help this be able to prompt. As we speak, it's reached now more than 3.9 million ladies since inception. And so for me, what I'm seeing is, and it's working over 1,300 government health facilities. So for me here, health is not a nice to have. It's not the chatbot thing. It's making a difference in how many mothers just get to live beyond the typical traditional area we've come with. And so now coming back to your question, with that kind of background, AI is not something that is coming to make a difference. It's making a difference today.
No. Okay.
We have areas that I know I've seen universities globally where they're able to leverage AI models to be able then to be able to pick up a student's trend in the continuous assessment exams or continuous assessment test, and then isolate and say, these 3 students, we need to intervene now. There's no need to wait for the end of the semester to realize there was an issue.
We can see it. And
yes, and maybe now that will come here, and then we will also broaden access to education. So I see AI already making a difference today. Does it mean that now we are in the best of shapes? No, It's still very early days for us. But what we are now learning is that it can make a difference. We just all need to agree, as the African Union has done, to then make it a strategic priority for African countries and governments.
Right. How the public views government when it comes to knowledge on technology is, a bit skeptical. It's like, what does a group of political heads know about, cloud computing?
Yes.
How are they adopting it from where you're looking at now working closely with public institutions and governments? How easily are they adopting this? Because impact is clear. You've mentioned health, education, agriculture. It needs to happen now.
Yes.
And also in a responsible and practical way. How are they doing it?
I think you're this is a very exciting question for me. If anyone looked at my profile this week, they'll know which organization I'm talking about. But we were meeting a government institution earlier this week together with my team. And we spent about 2.5, 3 hours just workshopping on some engagement we'd like to have around, again, impacting the country. And at the end, I remember telling them that anyone who doesn't engage this kind of teams closely has that view that you brought up, which is, how do these guys even know how to work? But I have to confess, not just in Kenya, across the continent, we meet some very smart people that work for government. I always have to remember that what gets reported is what will sell the papers. But what gets done and gets done successfully may not be that sensational. Sometimes what really, in all areas of life, let me put it in this space to digress a bit, your daily eating routines, your daily workout routines, those don't make the news. It's the day as you walk and you get smashed by a car that will make the news.
Yeah.
So I'm not a defender of any government. They have enough people to do that. But what I have to say is I have engaged with mass people across African governments to realize that there is a commitment towards improving and towards adopting. And there's no shortage of awareness. But I also have to tell you, when you talk about, say, public-private partnerships, I have seen that as we engage, we also get to learn. We sometimes are bringing our global perspectives, but we also get to learn the nuances of each country as we engage. Because we are not no one has command of all the knowledge. Yeah. So we all have to come together and make this happen.
Right. Yep. Let's not be know-it-alls.
Not at all. There's no such thing.
Yeah. Right. Partnerships, I think you've mentioned that is something I wanted to, bring it up. Making innovation stick across African markets. I think you've aptly put it there. No one knows it all. Just It's a learning curve, and there's no shortage of smart people across public or private institutions. So are we then in Africa's digital future? This podcast was about Africa's digital future.
Yes.
Should it be amended to Africa's digital now? Are we in that future?
Actually, I like to say that it's always nice to be fascinated about the future, but the future is being made by the choices we make now. And so it's not about the future, it's about the choices we're making every day. And if we have this conversation and then you and I do nothing after this, then the future might not actually even arrive.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, you talked about partnerships. Yes, we must have meaningful partnerships. From we work, governments make the decision around the regulatory framework of the jurisdictions they lead over, but they also are ultimately responsible over the people that they lead. We have organizations like ourselves that then come in and bring global best practices and have continuously invested and evolved in terms of technology and digital transformation. There is room for us to then come and partner. And so whether you're talking about infrastructure, which like we continue to invest on the continent of Africa, whether you're talking about policy and regulatory harmonization. So that case in point here, I met one of the African governments that told me that they want to be a regional data hub, but their regulatory framework decides that no data should leave their country. So I asked, So how will the other countries then put their data in your country if no data leaves yours? You know, and then so that we harmonize regulatory frameworks. And then also for me, we have to all be invested in the skilling. Traditionally, a lot of players in the digital space came in and just invested in niche skills. Everyone came and just did a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but if let's all have a view of the bigger picture, end to end, and then invest in a way that incrementally grows the country and the space that we're in. And lastly, for me, when I think about partnerships, it's something I call localized innovation and ownership. It's very easy to come in and say, we're going to copy and paste. But as we have already learned in Africa, in areas such as fintech, edtechs, health techs, and some of which we're already supporting, we've seen that because of them being local startups and developing digital tools that then make a difference to solve local unique challenges, then we've seen that the solutions are tailored to local needs and have significant impact.
So your work is to just come and support that, understanding the nuance that different markets offer.
Yes, and then say, let's work. There's a concept in AWS or in Amazon as a group we call working backwards, to listen in and say, what is the desired end goal of this health ministry or this health engagement? And then we now work backwards from that goal to then ensure that we work towards that goal.
Right. Great. We spoke a lot. We could go on and on about this. It's a topic I'm really passionate about. Yes. I'm happy to have been sitting here learning from you and listening into what the future is looking like for me, as I'm part of that booming youth population. So you're directly speaking to my future.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there something you could point out that you will say success looks like, in the public sector in the coming years, where you will have been sitting down and saying, yeah, we really did it?
I think I'm always very hesitant to predict the future when it comes to technology, right? Because even 2 or 3 years ago, anyone who told you about would not have forecasted today.
What is happening? Yeah.
But for me, when I look at it in the context of Africa, we are now in 2026. So by 2031, for me to be really resilient and fast-growing economies, again, it's at the heart of that booming youth. So that when our economies are resilient, they're growing fast, and driven by tech innovation, amongst other drivers. Why is that important? It then means that then we will have economies that are diverse. We will have a transformation in the way, whether you're citizens, whether we are patients, whether we are learners, the way that we engage with the hospitals, the education platforms, the government services is rapidly improved and accelerated because of technology. And therefore, as a result of that, economies will be booming. People will still then be happy they'll be growing as a result of the booming economies. People are growing, and therefore then as a result, whether it's businesses or jobs, we have then sustainable job creations and business platforms. I think for me, that would be the dream of where technology then makes a difference. And why I'm particularly positive about it or optimistic is that when I look at where we are today, is that whether you think about education, whether you think about healthcare, whether you think about citizen services, are we where we need to be? Not at all. But we are definitely not where we were 3 to 5 years ago. There is an intentional conversation or even action and execution that's then saying, let's keep really challenging ourselves to make it better.
Wow. Are you always this positive?
I'm very optimistic.
Right.
First, because I'm a business leader. If I became pessimistic, I can't lead a business, because then things are just going to get bad. But also, what is the option?
Yeah.
To be pessimistic.
Nah.
Then we live at home, stop eating, and just wait to die.
We won't take that.
Not at all.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming through, Robin Njiru, Public Sector Lead, Sub-Saharan Africa for Amazon Web Services, who are a part of us here at KOFISI, and we're proud to be associated with the work you're doing, and hopefully for more meaningful engagements and partnerships into the future. Thank you for tuning in to the KOFISI Connect podcast. My name is Richard Okenya. I'll catch you in the next one.